This episode is brought to you by T-Mobile, America's best unlimited network.
Happy Thursday. Welcome to Screen Junkies Universe. It is a big day in Hollywood and the world. This is Dan Murrell.
Hello.
I'm Roth Cornet. That's Joe Starr.
Well, good morning.
Mr. Billy Business is here.
Everyone was complaining yesterday that I didn't have a mic.
You didn't have a mic, so we just put you on
I
one.
just kicked Spencer right out, said, give me your mic.
Yeah, we put you on one because we want the people to hear what you have to say, Mr. Billy Business. And there's one big thing to talk about in this video. And then, guess what? As an exciting piece of news, we're going to have more videos on news, talking about other things that are happening in the world today and movie fights later. So it's a big day here at Screen Junkies. But let's dive in with one of the biggest deals, shall I say it, of the
all time.
There you go. I was looking for the right level of hyperbole, and that's maybe not true. And that is Disney.
This is bigger than when Rome bought Greece. I don't know if that happened.
Yeah.
Did that happen?
Well, I think the only bigger kind of deal between entertainment was the AOL Time Warner,
AOL
right?
Time Warner.
Comcast, NBC was pretty big, but even those were kind of complement, like, you know, companies in the same telecommunications industry. But
Right.
yeah, AOL Time Warner is one. But even that, I mean, this is from an entertainment standpoint, two entertainment giants like this. It's hard to think of the precedent for this as far as just like what is now being controlled under one umbrella, the number of franchises, the number of just what we talked about it. Almost a third of the box office revenue now would be under one roof.
Well, let's set this up because there is so much to dive into today. Disney has officially acquired a major portion of 21st Century Fox this morning for a sum total of $52.4 billion.
Pocket change.
Pocket change in an all-stock deal. Now, a lot. So CEO Bob Iger, as expected, extended his contract by 2 years in order to oversee this deal. That's one piece of it. There will be a spin-off Fox Broadcasting Company that will include Fox Sports, Fox News, Fox television stations, and a handful of other assets. 21st Century Fox will, and this is another key piece, will continue to pursue its acquisition of the remaining 61% stake in your party. I can't talk today.
It's a big day. There's a lot to talk about.
Sky, I'm trying to get through it, people, so we can get into the discussion. So then Disney would take that over as well. This is big. Disney, and here we get into the, okay, let me preface this a little bit.
Sure.
A lot of folks out there are going to look at this and very understandably be excited about the idea of the Avengers coming together with the X-Men and Wolverine, fighting with the Avengers, and all of that is very natural. And I totally get that enthusiasm. We just want to break down what this means in total, and then we can look at our level of excitement after that.
Yeah.
Look, I think, look at what I'm wearing right now. I'm wearing a Star Wars The Last Jedi. Clearly, I am a Disney fan. I'm a fan of all of these properties. So yes, when you hear this news, you get very excited. And I definitely don't want to be hypocritical and say that there are facets to this whole thing that I'm like, wow, that's really cool. But I also think, I really want us to take the time to like break down what that means as a whole, because I do think that there are a lot of things that a lot of people just don't think about. That being said, Joe and I are wearing Star Wars shirts, so we'll just take that hate right off the top.
It's all good. This is a big deal. I remember in the mid-'90s when the company that produces all pets announced they were just going to go ahead and merge mice, hamsters, and gerbils into one small cage. And at first I was like, that'll be so cool that, what's that guy going to look like? But then, I realized after a while, I was like, oh, well, now I don't get hamsters.
Yeah, and it looks like a pork.
Yeah, it does. It is a pork, ironically. Yes.
We didn't understand. So let's talk about this. This is a key piece. Disney expects to realize $2 billion in cost savings from combining Disney and Fox's overlapping businesses. This is what that means. That
Cost savings.
Cost savings in this context means that after, and that, by the way, there's still 18 months probably of this going through. This may not go through.
It's got to go through regulatory bodies. It's got to go through any number of reviews and revisions. And I mean, this is not a done deal, and this is going to take. Warner Brothers is currently in the middle of a merger that they themselves are trying to get through that is running into some not FCC, but some government regulatory issues. And I think that, this isn't a done deal. This is going to take forever, particularly when you're looking at doubling your box office presence and controlling. I mean, just look at the number. You already have Star Wars, you have the MCU, you have Pixar, you have the Disney animation, all of the Pirates of the Caribbean, all of the Disney things, and you're now adding to that not just Deadpool and the X-Men and the Fantastic Four. You're adding Avatar and Alien, Die Hard and Predator and The Simpsons. Like I mean, all of these things that Fox has now. This is a huge. You are becoming a monolith. In this town.
It's a massive organization, and what it means is, if and when the deal does go through, but it has to go through a regulatory process. If it does go through, that $2 billion is going to be in jobs. That means that if there are redundancies in the company, which inevitably there will be, in across departments, in production, in HR, in marketing, people are going to lose. A lot of people.
I think there's also going to be a high level of or high-level creative executives that are probably redundant. So you're going to have a lot of high-powered executives just on the market for a job.
Here's the difference: that high-powered executive gets to walk out the door with $10 million, and Lisa from HR gets a pink slip and 2 weeks' pay.
Sure.
That's the difference, and that's what when I was reading this, I mean, if you've watched me on this show. I've been a little skeptical of this, and there's part of me that is torn because yes, I'm a fan of comic books, and yes, it's going to be cool to see the X-Men fight with the Avengers. And if you think they're not going to do that, of course they're going to do that. It's going to be the first thing they work on when this is done. But this is what when I read this was the thing more than any of these are the franchises that are going to come to Disney Fox. Like this is what stood out to me: $2 billion in cost savings from combining overlapping businesses. Like that is jobs. That's departments. I looked this up. When NBC and Comcast merged, and again, these were not two complementary businesses in that NBC and Comcast both did the exact same thing. But even them, just for cost-cutting measures, when NBC and Comcast merged, there were 500 layoffs.
Sure.
And this is not just complementary departments merging. This is just looking at a spreadsheet and saying like, well, there's staffers here that can go, there's staffers there that can go. What is that going to look like when you have two studios that have similar structures, that have this, like we were saying, HR, casting, legal, like they have all of these different departments that they're now going to be two of, that they're not going to keep everything for? How many jobs is that?
Well, Joe, you and I both know, because we're big wrestling fans, the AOL Time Warner merger, which completely ended WCW. Now, that's such a weird kind of parallel, but what I'm saying is that was a whole company that they decided, we don't want wrestling on TNT now that we have, the AOL Time Warners combined. That was a whole company that just, it was kind of on its last legs, but it just went under. And so you have to think, how many other things from Fox in this deal is Disney going to be like, that just doesn't really fit in our mold? That could be a whole production crew. That could be a whole show. That could be just something that just overnight just goes.
Yeah. Well, it won't be overnight. It'll be within a year.
Sure.
But a long, long night.
It'll be a long night. Well, that's one of the things is that people are talking about, well, I'm going to get to what will happen with current production, but first let's talk about another concern is if you look at the studio system before there were unions, certainly the creators were not always given their fair shake, and that's still true in many cases, but the unions do protect creators in many ways. But still, this level of power in one entity is a little bit dangerous for the people that are actually writing and creating the content. And as such, the WGA has come out with a statement very much against this deal. And this is what they had to say. In the relentless drive to eliminate competition, big business has an insatiable appetite for consolidation. Disney and Fox have spent decades profiting from and we're going to learn a new word today, people, oligopolistic. Nope.
Mostly nailed it.
Oligopolistic.
I can read the word and I know what it means, and it is so hard to pronounce, damn it. Supercalifragilistic control that the 6 major media conglomerates have exercised over the entertainment industry. You knew writers had to throw in that damn word.
Yeah. Supercalifragilistic, oligopolistic.
Oligopolistic. It's a great word, frankly. Often at the expense of the creators who power their television and film operations. Now, this proposed merger of direct competitors will make matters even worse by substantially increasing the market power of a combined Disney-Fox corporation. The antitrust concerns raised by this deal are obvious and significant. The Writers Guild of America West strongly opposes this merger and will work to ensure our nation's antitrust laws are enforced. Do you think other unions like SAG are going to come out with a similar statement?
That's a great question. I mean, there have been some people who are, I think, caught in the middle of this. Like I saw that, for example, James Gunn, who works, he does Marvel movies, is kind of like, you could tell like he's in a position professionally where he can't come all the way out against this. And I'm not saying he is against it, but he's like, he tweeted something like, yes, this is a really complicated deal and there's lots of different facets to it, but here is one element that I'm excited about, and kind of went on the genre thing because he has to understand that's what his fan base is there. And, if he doesn't say anything, then people are going to say, why aren't you saying anything? And if he comes out for it, then people are going to say like, what? But what about that? If he comes out against it, So I feel like there's so many people in Hollywood that are in a position of not really knowing what they can say, what they should say, what they can't say, what they
because they're going to be working with this entity.
They're going to be working with exactly. So for the Writers Guild to come out this strongly kind of surprises me because they are the writers that are going to write all of these movies, and you're facing a potential massive studio that a lot of people, especially the executives, have very long memories. And I am very curious to see where individual actors, writers, directors come out on this deal and what they say, because it does substantially, what they say could affect their professional. And this is when I say I'm skeptical of these kind of things, this is exactly why. You now have a company that is so powerful that people have to be careful in the industry publicly of what they say about it, because if they say a bad thing, then they could face professional repercussions, and that's not you don't want that.
Well, I mean, that's true to some degree. That's always been true. For people are careful about, look, if you get a Josh Trank, for example, going out and sort of speaking out very openly against the studio that employed him, he's probably not going to get employed by another studio. Anyone that goes out and rampantly goes against their employer is going to be considered a risk by another employer. That's just life. However, the difference here is that in a town that's full of people that are petty enough to blacklist other people for very dumb reasons, this is a ton of power. It's just a ton of power. I'm thinking about it, about that consolidation and what that means for the press and how they work with that studio.
So my question would be, if they find that this violates like antitrust and this deal can't go through, obviously Fox is in a position where they want to have somebody purchase them. What type of company should step in to kind of take over that role?
I think you would see something, if they said you cannot merge the companies, I think you would probably see something where Fox would just sell individual assets. That would be my guess. They would say like, okay, you can't buy all of our assets, but we're going to sell you this, and this, and then maybe that won't violate antitrust. And it's because it's basically Fox obviously is looking to liquidate, and I would guess they would just start selling their assets, maybe some to Disney, some to. That's kind of what you have to do. They would break up if the government says it's antitrust, then you just spread the wealth. So
I think especially this year we're seeing if something is shot down or vote, it's just going to come right back in a slightly different form, maybe some handwritten adjustments on the deal, and they're just going to hand it back and say, okay, maybe this, and they're just going to kind of keep slightly adjusting until finally the appropriate regulatory bodies are like, all right. I don't. If it's found to be a monopoly, or if it gets sort of shot down, they'll cut the lines that they need to cut, and it'll go through.
I mean, some of it does kind of make sense in the sense that the example I saw a lot in a lot of these articles was Modern Family, which is produced by Fox. It's bought by ABC or airs on ABC, but Fox still keeps all the syndication rights. So I could see like Disney wanting that back so they can completely own this entity of Modern Family.
Which brings us to our next. That was a very good segue.
Great segue.
I wish that we had a
put Billy on the thing.
Put Billy on that segue.
Oh, that segue tip over real fast.
which is a large motivation for this. It is being reported is they're entering into the streaming race, and with the streaming services, they both have an ESPN branded streaming service. They will now own the majority of Hulu, and they have their own Disney streaming service. And what they want is content. You're exactly right. They want to own it from start to finish, which is exactly what Netflix is doing right now, and exactly what Apple is going to do as they enter this in the next year. A large portion of why some people speculate that Apple will not buy Netflix is because Netflix currently licenses so much of its content. They're trying to correct that, and Apple just wants to straight up own it. So does Disney. And they felt that they couldn't compete in the streaming market without more content, that they just didn't have enough and they didn't make enough. And this tells us something very crucial about what they foresee in the next 10 years of entertainment, which is like they don't have Fox Network because they already own ABC, right?
Correct.
So I don't think they care, because I think they think that's just going to be irrelevant as people more and more cut their cords, and that even as the theater experience starts to shift and evolve, that the main thing that's going to matter for them is streaming, and they just want a ton of content for it, which is pretty interesting when you think about the implications of where entertainment's going to go.
Yeah, I mean, 30% of the box office revenue.
Almost 40 domestically.
Almost 40 domestically. 60% of Hulu, which is the top network streaming revenue, and if the Sky deal goes through, then this huge satellite broadcasting system in the UK. I mean, that is a massive amount of media consolidation.
How this affects the Sky deal too is really interesting. Like we said, we have had a lot of feedback where people are like, well, they've sort of whatabouted us, where they're like, well, what about this one and this one? They're all connected. They're very Dirk Gently'd. So if you're interested in this, definitely sort of look up the Sky deal with Fox and what that means for that moving forward, and do some reading, because they're all connected.
What do you think the implications will be with the Sky deal in terms of getting that international arm as well?
Well, I know that. I mean, Fox's sort of future moves regarding what happens with Sky are contingent, absolutely contingent on this. So that's. They're going to completely sort of shift their game plan regarding Sky, and that's also going to sort of become one, sort of massive thing.
I kind of feel like the biggest, not loser, but it just seems like, we've been talking almost for the better part of the year about how Netflix incurred all of this debt to get content, and it's like they just sat back, let Netflix build this whole thing, make all the mistakes, take all the lumps, and it's like, all right, now we'll get into this.
Now we know how to do it.
Now we know how to do it.
Sure.
And I truly wonder, when all this is said and done, like, what does Netflix look like?
They're not going to look. If you look at this, plus Apple, who can outspend anybody.
Yeah, sure.
They're the one that designed it, I think, is going to end up being the loser in the long run, unless it's bought by one of these other entities, like Apple.
That's the butterfly effect.
Yeah.
It seems like every time we talk about this, I talk about, like, look beyond Deadpool and the X-Men, look beyond the franchises, look beyond the genre. I know I get it. Look, as a comic book fan, this is extraordinarily exciting. Like, the fact that, like, this creative team that has done so much for these properties is now all under one thing. You can potentially get all these people in one place. You can get all this creative talent behind it and construct an even bigger universe. The MCU is winding down. You can even go bigger and create bigger movies. I get it. And that part of me is very excited. But look beyond that, because there is a lot of real world implications that you have to consider. It's not just about the comic book movies. I wish it were. If they had just sold them the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, boy, would we be having a different discussion right here today. But they're not just selling the Fantastic Four and the X-Men. And you have to take a real world view of things like this. And I think that people are going to come out of this saying, like, oh, well, they're being a huge downer on this, and they're saying that it's evil. And it's like, and that's not necessarily what we're saying, but we're saying, like, this is the kind of thing. It's unprecedented. It is creating a competitor in the space with a share and a power unlike not since the old days when there were 6 studios, and even then there was more competition. Has power been consolidated more in one place than what they're proposing with this?
That was not a great system for many people.
That was not a great system for many people, because they all talk to each other. If somebody got locked out of one, you get locked out of the other one. And then you look at things like what's going to happen with Fox Searchlight. That is a great venue for independent film. Like, there are so many Oscar contenders and just great little indie movies that come out of Fox Searchlight. Does that stay independent? I hope it does, but now who knows? Disney has their own independent arms. Do those live together? Do they become banners? What happens to Blue Sky? Fox has a whole animation division. Disney already has 2 of them. Are they going to have 3? Are you going to keep 3 animation divisions? If so, how does that even work? I mean, there's so many things that you have to wrap your head around in this, and you have to think about beyond just Wolverine and the Hulk. And that's really exciting, but you just look at this critically and just, we're not saying you need to make a judgment one way or the other on this, but just look at it. Just look at the details and make your own mind up just as a wider thing as an entertainment fan, because while you will get Wolverine punching the Hulk, this could also have some consequences that you didn't think about that you should.
And well, one of the things that people are talking about right now in terms of the X-Men is, what could this possibly mean for X-Men movies that are currently in production, like Dark Phoenix and New Mutants? Because do they want to then preserve those characters for whatever they're going to intend to do with them once this deal, if and when this deal does go through? They're not going to stop production because there's just too much money on the line and too many contracts, and the ship is sailed. But then also, New Mutants is done. Thank you. But the other thing too is like and Dark Phoenix and specifically, they're not going to stop anything at this point. That's the only thing is I'm wondering about very nascent things, but because if it does not go through, then they would have betrayed their shareholders. Like they would have cut off revenue streams potentially for Fox. And if the deal doesn't go through, then they're still going to need that money and those productions. So I think what gets trickier, and thank you for the correction, Joe, on New Mutants. But I think what gets trickier is planning for the future.
Yeah,
they're going to live in limbo for a year.
I feel like that James Franco one is probably at least on hold. I think, we've been holding our breaths for Gambit. I think you're just going to fall over and pass out.
That hand has folded.
X-Force, there's a lot of X-Men. They were really, because at the time, and I say at the time like it was 10 years ago. This was like 2 weeks ago. Their hands were really tied in terms of like, we have these X-Men properties. We have to make the best that we can to make our own kind of universe out of this. Does all those plans just go out the window? And now after Dark Phoenix or New Mutants, whatever the last one that's done, is that where we say, and that's the end of that chapter?
Yeah, you're doing
pausing. Yeah, exactly.
Something interesting to me is from a marketing standpoint for these films now, because we know they're coming out, because this is going to take a while. This is going to be a long time period. They're not just going to not put out Phoenix, New Mutants. How do you market these now with the caveat of also these might not matter? How do you sell that now? Where it's
You have to sell the standalone.
Yeah,
you have to disconnect it from the idea that this is all one.
Yeah, or Dark Phoenix is the end of an era or something like that. But that's just really interesting to me. Of like, come see the next chapter of this book that's not going to get finished.
Well, because this is going to be a hard reset on all of this stuff. And I'm not talking about the MCU. I'm talking about what Fox has with the potential of, we're already there with Wolverine, but with the potential of probably not Deadpool because it's successful. But everything else, it's. How
do they plan?
You don't, and these are the kind of things that are gonna, like a pond.
Sure.
Yeah.
This is just what happens, and then
I think entry into the MCU's easy. All this weird crap has gone on, and now mutants are being born. Ta-da! So, it's just like they did in the comics. Here's your standard superheroes, but now this new thing is happening. So that's an easy entry. But the challenging one, I think, is if it doesn't go through and they don't hit the MCU, like what does Fox do for the next 18 months? If I could just circle back to streaming for a second, something interesting to me with the control in Hulu and like what you were saying about sort of reading the tea leaves for the future and streaming, it sort of redefines the conversations you have about streaming for a little bit, because Amazon announces this Lord of the Rings show is going to be the most expensive show ever made, and you kind of laugh it off like, oh, God, what are you guys doing? Yeah. Now you know what they're doing. They hear the war drums beating, so they're gonna fire off a volley of the most expensive show ever produced to compete with this.
Which won't work, by the way.
Probably not. No.
Imagine
unless it's dope.
We talk about market share. Like, imagine the global market share that this company would have in a year, and this year is going to happen at some point. In a year where they release a Star Wars movie, 2 Marvel movies, an Avatar movie, an X-Men movie, like.
Oh my God.
Pixar movies.
Pixar movie. What other movie is going to come out in that year?
Exactly.
Dan?
It's gonna be Fox-y movies, the movies, and again, these are the movies that now that Disney's already has the power now to do. They're going to have even more power to do, to go to theater chains and say you're going to play these for X amount of time, and you're going to give us X amount of the ticket sales, and that's how it is, or you don't get the movie. Well, now double that. They're even more powerful. They're in even a better position now to do that. They're now in a better position to go to a company like MoviePass and say like we're not going to let you use MoviePass for our movies unless you give us X amount of time. Again, I'm not saying that they're going to do these things, but these are the things that you have to think about when you think about creating a giant conglomerate like this. You know?
Why wouldn't they? I mean, that's the thing.
They're a business. Why wouldn't they?
It's a nice movie pass you got there. Be a shame if something happened
Can
to
I
it.
also just say, completely divorced from the reality of the situation and what's going to happen to the industry?
Yeah.
My wife and I, we went to Disneyland last Saturday, and in the span of a couple hours, we did Peter Pan, Star Tours, and Guardians of the Galaxy. And I just thought, man, if this had been when I was 7 years old, I'd be like, this is the best like area of the world possible. It's everything that I love. So like, I just want to say like, again, because I do feel like I don't want anyone to feel guilty if they're like, man, I know everything, but I'm still super pumped.
Yeah,
it's like, don't feel guilty. Like, like it's exciting. You just also like now, like I said, I have to divorce myself from the reality of what's really going on behind it.
Yeah, I don't want to be Danny Downer over here saying like,
Right.
you know, like this is what you really have to think about. I'm just saying like, don't just blindly say, oh, this is great because of this one thing. Like, that is a huge piece of it, but that is 5% of this deal.
There definitely are some assets that are either really cool to me or or just sort of odd and sort of like, okay, I'm like Avatar. What a weird franchise to even want to buy. The idea that people are like, I still see a future in Avatar. I mean, I know that the land is being built.
And like, it makes sense. That's the thing about something like an Avatar going to Disney is like Disney actually does have the infrastructure to capitalize on it with a theme park and to tie it in and to make the experience. Again, just like there are like Avatar was the first one. I was like, that actually makes a lot of sense to me. Another one that I think could be
so many jobs for tall life people that they're going to paint blue to run around in the park.
Another one that I think could potentially be exciting is finally getting the last piece of the Star Wars puzzle back, which is A New Hope.
Yeah.
Which Fox still maintains the rights to. I think they at least had them for another couple years. I don't know if this means necessarily that we'll get the unaltered trilogy now released because I don't know what deal Lucas made when he sold it. That being said, if it's ever going to happen, like we're that much closer.
If you think that if there's any possible way that this company could not now package a remastered Blu-ray edition of the Star Wars movies unaltered, you're insane.
But do you think? Did Lucas have any
Unless
caveat?
Lucas made a clause that said you will never release the unaltered version.
Or they release it, they do a theatrical release just as a promotional, because you know they hold back the movies. And wouldn't it be interesting if they hold? Think about if the deal takes 18 months.
The Diamond Edition.
Right. Then it's about the time that the streaming service is happening. Maybe you can only find it there at that point. Like that would be a move.
You know, something else that I just thought of, but that I didn't even, is like, again, is the ripple effect as you go ahead. Like, have you ever tried to pre-buy a Marvel movie on Amazon?
You can't.
You can't. Because there's pre-existing deals that exist with other retailers and ripples. That just expands that kind of thing because
like
now
poetry.
You can sign it's like poetry. It rhymes.
And I believe once it's actually released, because you can't pre-order it, and I think when it is released, only Prime members can actually buy it.
These are the things that happen. Not saying they're evil. It's business.
What if, just saying Star Wars Empire.
Massive business.
What if, and come with me, what if they just specialize them even more?
The super ultra.
They've got the originals and they just add more shit.
just like Poe walks into one scene and
there's in the foreground there's a Star Wars scene and then Poe Dameron just goes.
I mean, would you be shocked if like they added in like as an Easter egg, like in the big Coruscant battle or Revenge of the Sith, it's like the ship from WALL-E just as like in the background.
The only restoration I care about in Return of the Jedi is the urban myth of the shoe and the wad of chewing gum that are starships in the background during the Battle of Endor. I want the shoe back in because I know Lucas took out the shoe. I want the shoe back in.
Hashtag save the shoe.
Hashtag save the shoe.
I want that jub jub.
Yes.
I want that jub jub.
You want that
Yub Nub song, right?
Yub yub. Yeah, want that.
The only thing that I read something today that made me laugh on Twitter, which I didn't read a lot this morning on Twitter that made me laugh, but I saw something that said, and I think Patton Oswalt himself may have even retweeted it, but it said like the best thing to come out of this Disney Fox deal is that Patton Oswalt's epic rant is one close step into reality. If you haven't seen it, he went on Parks and Recreations and did this like 8-minute long improvised thing about like his ultimate Marvel Star Wars crossover. And it was like every character from every franchise all combining, and
Has
it's like
anyone animated that?
I think someone might have. It's if you haven't seen it, it's amazing. But it is one step. Bart Simpson can now join the Star Wars universe if this goes through. You could have the Millennium Falcon land on Pandora. You could have Wolverine fight a Predator.
I would see that movie in a heartbeat.
We're one step closer to our fan art coming true.
Yep,
that's
of
true.
The xenomorph.
Roth, may I interest you in It's Always Sunny in Dantooine?
Oh my God.
Well, that was one other thing I read in one of the articles was like one thing that is going to be kind of difficult, and this is with any merger of any companies, is the corporate culture of something like FX is going to be very hard to fold into something like Disney, because Disney is kind of known for their corporate culture and how they kind of structure things, where I feel like FX is probably a little bit more tight-knit, a little bit more scrappy. I don't know how
A lot more snacks. A lot more snacks.
I don't know how that's gonna meld, you know?
I would bet there are more snacks at Disney, but also more rules.
I've worked
What
at
do you
Disney,
think?
and I can
Are there
tell you.
snacks?
What's the snack
No
situation?
snacks.
What?
Yeah, they do have
No
a very
snacks.
nice cafeteria, like common area.
Oh.
But they
But they make you
Panda
pay for
Express
it.
in there. Oh yeah. No, I mean there are snacks,
Joe
but
Coleman.
I don't. There are not like the
Coleman.
Mouseified provided snacks in all common areas. You would think there might be, but not as many.
There's actually some speculation that the place, so I think when they're consolidating, it's largely going to be weighted towards Disney employees, right? They will largely keep their jobs, and Fox employees will largely lose their jobs in all likelihood, except perhaps in the area of television, where Fox is actually quite good in the quality that they produce. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, but shows that are on FX, I don't want them touched. Those are some of the best.
Well,
Fargo.
Disney has full teams. The way a lot of TV is structured over there, they have full teams that reach across sort of everything Disney produces. So there's not just like necessarily like ABC focused. Like there are teams that take care of stuff from ABC, from streaming, sort of from all over the gauntlet. So I have a feeling it will be more of. And I know people like this in my life that work in similar departments in both companies, and I have a feeling it's going to be they break a pool cue and throw it in the middle of the room kind of.
We're gonna have tryouts.
We're gonna have tryouts.
So what you're saying, Joe, is that you have a bad feeling about this.
Yes.
It is a complicated structure already over there. I remember back in the day doing DVD features for one of their Disney Channel movies, and we were doing the features, and I had to license the music from the musical in that movie to put it on the DVD feature.
You have to license within itself?
I had to license within itself.
Yep.
Does that make sense to any of you? Because it didn't to me, and I had to pay for all of the messengers. That aside.
So it's like taking the dollar out of one pocket and putting it in the other pocket?
Correct.
Yes.
All right.
It was bonkers. But anyway, that's what happened, and this is this deal. It's going to be a lot to talk about over the next year as things evolve. Again, totally understand the excitement for characters that you love coming together. It would be, if it was that purchase alone, I think it would be a very different video that wouldn't be 35 minutes long. It would be, yay, Wolverine. But this is a complicated situation. If you're still excited, that totally makes sense. But let us know what you do think in the comments below. You can tweet at us, talk to us. We will be back very shortly with a whole other video about another very important matter and movie fights. is at 4 p.m. today on Screen Junkies Main. You're not going to want to miss it because Billy Business is going to make a cameo.
Oh, wow. Really?
Am I?
No,
What?
maybe.
Okay.
Well,
Now
right
you
on.
have to.
This episode was brought to you by T-Mobile. Switch to America's best unlimited network.